All hail Biafra. This is Biafra Liberation Army Network coming to you again. Please do subscribe, like, share, and comment.
The essential ingredients from 1960 Constitution were largely retained. The only thing that happened was that the Queen was removed as the title head of the Nigerian state. That was one. Second thing was the recognition and gazetting, if I may use that one, by inclusion of the Midwest region, which was created in 1962 or thereabout. So it was now included properly in the schedule to the 1963 Constitution. Now, as with everything human, there were disagreements. The unfortunate thing was that instead of allowing these disagreements to play out as best as could be, using the dispute resolution mechanisms that were already in place, the courts, which were nowhere near as corrupt as they have become today, the democratic process, as imperfect as it were, given the massive rigging of the elections in 1962, all these were normal human disagreements that might, given time, have been resolved. But of course, young men who were soldiers infected by the virus of coup, which was already spreading across Africa. It already happened in the Congo with the CIA-sponsored murder of Patrice Lumumba. It was already happening in Ghana. This provided to these young men a shorter cut to a necessary end. So in January 1966, these young men struck. They destroyed that constitution effectively. And that was the end of it. So it wasn't a situation where Nigerians decided on their own that they didn't want that constitution anymore and then replaced it with something else. We've never managed to replace it with anything that flew from the Nigerian people or any. The important thing is that all men will die. What you do between being battered and dying is what is called living. So I would urge each and every one of us to live out our lives in the understanding that we will all die someday. And what you do between being born and eventually dying is what is called living. Do well to live in a manner that will let the living remember you for good. Now, why is it so difficult for the Nigerian to understand that you are being divided on purpose? Our historical antecedent makes this easy. The fact of our colonial history makes this almost inevitable. Those who banded together these people called Nigerians were never ever interested in the people finding unity of purpose. They needed us to be knowledgeable enough to service the colonial needs. They needed us to be able to act in manners dictated by them, but it was never in the interest of the colonialists to allow us to find common purposes. So they always dealt with us as ethnic nationalities or derogatively as tribes. So the idea of a Nigerian state was not something that came about so that the people would find common purpose. It came about so that a disparate people gathered together would serve the interest of those who have gathered them together. Unfortunately, in spite of the fact that we've been independent of Britain, quote and unquote, for longer than half a century, 63 years, going on 64 to be exact, we have not managed as a people to find common purpose because we have been divided on purpose. Then you would find that it becomes easier to evolve a Nigerian identity. But because the allocation of rights and privileges are always found first on ethnic identity, what you find is that certain ethnicities are advantaged and some are deliberately disadvantaged. This already makes it impossible to have a melting pot because it is better to be something other than the other. So the Nigerian is deliberately divided. That is when you begin to look at ethnicity. At another level, you begin to find further disadvantages and advantages allocated solely on the basis of religiosity. So if I am a Muslim, I gain certain advantages in certain parts of the country. If I'm a Christian, I gain certain advantages in certain parts of the country. There is no equal treatment for those called Nigerians. We are forced to seek advantages by identifying with one of the many divisions that the Nigerian state has contrived. We are divided on purpose. These divisions weakens us as a collective. It makes it next to impossible to find common purpose. To free ourselves as a collective becomes impossible because we are too busy being Yoruba, we are too busy being Hausa, we are too busy being Igbo, we are too busy being Fulani, we are busy being something or the other than Nigerian. In the absence of the Nigerian, the evil that you tolerate because it is perpetrated against somebody who is not of your religion or of your ethnicity becomes legalized against every other person, including you. So what you then find is that in seeking to assess these advantages, you begin to validate the divisions, you promote it. The unity of the oppressive class should be a lesson to the oppressed. So in reality, you cannot divorce any of the many religiosities from the mess that we have become as a collective. But whilst we have been divided almost to the point where we have become useless, they have become one. My first book said, "Do not die in their war." Their war is over, if you haven't noticed. If you ever doubted it, let me show you. After the Supreme Court judgments in relation to gubernatorial elections, you heard the governors specifically thanking Jaguda because they knew and they know very clearly that it was the consensus of the oppressed that saved their gubernatorial seats. If they had moved, if the Supreme Court had found the grace to continue the shenanigans that it began when it confirmed the fraud that is called Tinubu, what would have happened in a place like Kano, for instance, is that the Kwankwansiya movement would have stood onto the street and made Kano probably the fulcrum or the catalyst for the revolution, because they would have gone violent, unlike those of us speaking Dogon Turenchi. The system was aware of this. They made peace amongst themselves. The Kwakwanso installed governor left in peace. Whatever deal they might have been caught, they found the grace to leave him in place. You find the same thing in Plateau State. Enugu is the funniest of the lot. A governor was confirmed in spite of the fact that the Director General of the NYSC came out and said, "This certificate is a forgery. We never issued it." What happened in Plateau with the House of Assembly members, you begin to have a clear-cut idea of the level of peace and deterrence that has been found by the ruling class, even as they continue to divide you. So you find very quickly, if you're thinking that their war is over, the war in the ruling class is done. They have come to the understanding that they are better served by uniting against all of us. But we have continued to divide ourselves. in spite of the clear evidences of our brains that should have told us that we need to find common purpose. I've noticed that in moments where Nigerian football teams have found some rhythm and achieved some measure of success, our people have been more united than they have ever been. Nobody remembers the ethnicity of the footballer who scored the goal, the one who saved the penalty, the one who prevented, the defender who prevented the goal. We all cheer together as one, as a people with common purpose. But that common purpose in football or any other sport is fleeting. It comes and it goes. So you want to win the Nations Cup. We are all going to be packed together today. Nobody is going to be asking the ethnic identity or religious affiliation of anyone. We'll be shouting, hey, when we score. We would all cry together as one if we lose. Some people died because they were watching Nigeria just last week. We found common purpose because of football. But we cannot find common purpose in the midst of us being picked off like flies, dying avoidable deaths. We have not managed to find common purpose to shake off the oppression that we are all suffering. We cannot find the common purpose. Is it beyond our capacities as human beings to understand that in spite of every differences that we might believe that we have, our salvation lies in uniting together? Find the common purpose. Is it too much? Is it too difficult for us to understand this need? It is an existential need that we find the common purpose so that we do not continue to get picked off one after the other like chicken. Praise, we become as praise. And the most annoying part of this is the fact that those who have captured us and turned us into praise are nowhere near as intelligent as a lot of us who are busy fighting ourselves over nothing. In the midst of all of these, you are still busy denigrating the humanity of another instead of finding the common purpose to understand that your afflictions are the same. The Yoruba man is as hungry as the Igbo man. The Igbo man is as hungry as the Fulani man. The Ijaw man is as hungry as his next man. We are all human first.